Good evening. This is Chair Steve Kahn. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, would the Deputy City Clerk, Megan Wilbanks, please call the roll?
Commissioner Cooley?
Here.
Commissioner Houghton? Commissioner Jorgensen?
Here.
Commissioner Munoz Morris?
Here.
Vice Chair Hopkins will be absent tonight. Chair Kahn?
Here. At this time, we'd like to hear any public comments for items not on tonight's agenda. Items are generally referred to staff, and if action by the commission is necessary, may be scheduled at a future meeting. Deputy City Clerk, do we have any public comments?
No, Chair, we do not. We have one request to speak, but it's on the public hearing item.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we have the consideration of the minutes for January 25th, 2023. Does anybody have any comments? If not, I would entertain a motion and a second to approve consent.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Hearing none, motion passes. On to the public hearings. Any court challenges to the action taken on a public hearing item on this agenda may be limited to considering only those issues raised at the public hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the City of San Luis Obispo at or prior to the public hearing. If you wish to speak, please give your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. With that, the first public hearing item before us is a review of a proposed amendment for the cannabis business retail storefront operations and review of expansion of the cannabis business overlay zones. Would Cannabis Business Coordinator Alex Fuch, please present the report.
Well, good evening, Chair Kahn and members of the commission. Actually, my name is Brian Lavelle. I'm a senior planner in the Community Development Department, and I'll be handling the presentation on Alex Fuch's behalf. I'll do my best to answer any questions. I do have some exposure to the program, and also joined by Michael Cadron, the Community Development Director, who has some background in the program, so we should be well prepared tonight. This is a brief presentation. I'm going to provide a brief overview of the recommended updates that were just described by Chair Kahn, and then staff will be available for any questions. And staff's recommendation this evening is that the Planning Commission recommend the council approve the proposed municipal code amendments and expand the cannabis business zone overlay to the East Airport areas. Just for some background, when the City Council adopted or at the program's inception back in 2018, the City Council established 7 areas that were deemed to be cannabis business overlay zones. And these were zones of the city that essentially were found to contain compatible land uses and zoning, were free of identified sensitive uses, and that also included properties that fronted arterial streets, which are required for retail storefront permits. Just generally areas of the city that were identified as compatible and appropriate for all the types of businesses that fit under the cannabis program. In March 2020, the area is known as the East Airport area, annexation area. This is an area in the east of Broad Street in the airport area specific plan. It's about 58 acres. It consists of all service commercial zoning. It includes essentially the types of uses that are similar to what was looked at when the program was adopted initially. Looking at this area since the annexation, staff has found that essentially this area contains the same similar characteristics as the overlay zones and recommends inclusion of the cannabis business overlay zone to also be applied to the East Airport areas. Before I move off of this, I just wanted to note as well, staff will be returning in the near future with recommended amendments to also apply the cannabis business zone overlays to another area of the city that was annexed at the same time as this area, and that is the Fierro and Clarion areas west of Broad Street, north of the airport. So you should be seeing that in the near future. As far as the policy changes for retail storefront operations, staff received direction from the City Council in October of 2022 when we were conducting a program update to City Council. Council directed staff to look at 3 main items. And what's recommended is some changes to operating hours, a minor change, essentially the request to open 2 hours earlier and stay open 1 hour later than is currently allowed is requested. So currently that's 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. and what's proposed is to change the hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. The other change is to allow 18 to 20 year olds who are medical cannabis users access to storefronts. Currently, our regulations do not allow that. 18 to 20 year olds are minors that are prohibited from entering any retail storefront. And then also there's a clarification to actually an update more to the administrative regulations that would clarify that retail storefronts may also conduct delivery operations. Looking at the comparative agency analysis, San Luis Obispo currently has the most restrictive hours, and it's the only city now allowing or not allowing 18 to 20 year old medical cannabis users access to storefronts. And the city of San Luis Obispo is also the only city based on comparisons that does not allow storefronts to also deliver. The proposed changes are consistent with comparison cities, and all the recommended changes are consistent with what's allowed under state regulations. For environmental review, the project is exempt pursuant to the general rule, where it can be seen with certainty that the proposed activities in question will not have a significant effect on the environment. In this case, the recommended changes do not include any physical effects on the environment. They don't change any development standards that could have physical effects on the environment. And then project-specific environmental review is required for any new operations and any discretionary review that may take place going forward under the program. And again, the staff recommendation is for the Planning Commission to adopt a resolution recommending the council approve the cannabis program updates described in the staff report in the attached Planning Commission resolution and attached exhibits. And that concludes the staff presentation. We're available for questions.
Thank you very much, Brian. Appreciate it. Are there any questions of staff? Yes.
Hi, yeah, two quick questions for you. First one is a pretty straightforward presentation and recommendation. Appreciate that. As far as the hours, I understand the expansion to, we're basically better lining up with other municipalities here. But what's the logic to not go to the full state allowable service window 6 to 10 p.m.? Is that feedback from public safety agencies related to additional hours, or what's the reason?
Yeah, I think really a lot of what drives this was just kind of the request of the operators. This is consistent with what was the input that was received from the current retail operators, that these would be the hours that would work with their businesses. Also, just generally consistency with the other comparison cities.
Gotcha. Okay. And then
I
secondly,
could just add a little bit to that,
Please.
just to let you know, the chief of police is on the steering committee for our cannabis program. So all of these changes are shared with the police department. They're also part of the cannabis team in the chain of command. There are a number of officers, lieutenant sergeants that engage with us and give us advice. So when the change was requested, all of the components of the change were requested by the operators. We shared that internally. No concerns came back. And then in terms of why not the state hours, we just think that the appropriate change at this point is to align with all the other jurisdictions so that there's consistency in the region. And that's what the operators asked for as well. They didn't ask for more than that. So.
great, thank you. Secondly, kind of along the same lines, is I find it surprising that delivery is allowed within city limits, but not if you have a storefront operation. And I guess I don't understand the logic behind allowing delivery within city limits for companies that are forced to then establish outside of city limits, and we're not capturing the sales tax. And I guess I understand allowing it now, but why wasn't it allowed before?
Well, and just to clarify, the city does capture tax revenue from delivery operators outside the city that operate inside
okay.
the city.
Okay.
Yeah, this is more of a clarification. The administrative regulations don't clearly allow for sort of the dual uses where a storefront could also deliver.
I see.
And Michael, you could add on to this. My understanding is when at the inception of the program, there was some concern that the market essentially could be that a small number of operators could control a large share of the market. Things
I
haven't
see.
really worked out that way, especially with deliveries and the way there's so much competition from outside the city limits. So really, it's more of an update to the administrative regulations and. Yeah, I don't, Michael, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think the biggest change that causes us to support this request is that initially there wasn't clarity around state law in terms of delivery services outside city limits being able to deliver within the city. And so once that happened, it changed our view in terms of competitiveness and the sort of hamstring that we're tying to our local businesses by not being able to deliver. So this is equaling the playing field based on new information that we've learned since we started operating the program. And it was a change, or it was a clarification that the state made well into the process.
Awesome. Great. Thank you very much.
That one?
Yeah. Commissioner
Sure.
Howard.
Thanks. So just to follow up on that, so the delivery market in the city was effectively protected while it was not clear whether outside cities operations could deliver.
I think that there were always delivery services delivering into the city. We did our best to require business tax certificates and to collect appropriate revenues based on those transactions that occurred with the point of sale being in the city.
Okay.
Over time, getting feedback from operators saying, hey, we're at a disadvantage here is what caused us to look
Okay.
at the
That
situation.
makes sense.
Okay.
And then my only other question was when I look at the map on the very last page of the packet, the center of gravity of all the zones is off to the south, which I guess makes sense because that's where the kind of industrial and so I know that this is not on the docket today, but is there any pressure to have something on the north side? This is my first time looking at all this stuff. So how did it end up like that? And is that intentional or is that likely to stay that way?
Yeah, I think the distribution of the cannabis zones and where the cannabis businesses are allowed really just shakes out because of where the zoning types are situated in the city, the service, commercial, manufacturing, BP zone properties. I don't know that we've received a lot of input or public comment or direction to sort of look at ways to accommodate in different areas of town. That's not something we've heard in
Okay.
our cannabis program updates. I don't know, Michael.
The only thing I'll add is that I think that asymmetry occurs because we don't allow dispensaries downtown. Downtown would be the natural place where one would want to locate if we allowed it there. But pretty
Right.
much from the beginning of the pretty substantial outreach process we did when we were designing the program, we heard from downtown SLO, from business owners, property owners in the downtown that they weren't interested and didn't think it was appropriate for one of those stores to be downtown. And it hasn't come up to us as a request through our outreach efforts or operators requesting it, property owners requesting it. So it's not something that we're looking at right now.
Okay. And so that was the last question, but the magic number of 3, is that likely to stay put?
Yes, currently we have 2 operators, so we have the ability to open up a new application period for a retail operator. We're going to ask the city council when we get there, what direction they have on that, but it's the decision of the city manager when to open up that application period, and it's a lot of things factor into it, including like staff capacity for proctoring and overseeing the process, because it can be very contentious and you have to be very detailed in terms of how you do that, because there's litigation very common in that environment. And so we just actually got news today that our consultant who has helped us proctor these application periods in the past isn't available for our next July application period. So that's something that we're going to be doing some groundwork to try to address and make sure we're ready to go July 1st. But whether or not the last retail license will be available July 1st or not depends on some other issues, and we'll get guidance from the city council, and ultimately the city manager will make a decision about that.
So a quick question. And I did have questions about the process by which the current rules were arrived at, and I think I've gotten some insight into that, so thank you. My remaining question is just really one of curiosity. I believe you mentioned that there's going to be another area that the overlay zone will be extended into in the near future. Is there any reason why that's not happening at the same time as this? Are they different in some way? Is there something we should know about these areas?
The areas are very similar in terms of character and land uses. And I think the best way to put that is it just had to do with essentially staff workload. And there's not a reason why they shouldn't have been included, and it would have been better to include the 2 together. So that's.
But at some point, we'll see a very similar presentation about a separate zone.
You'll see it. It'll be very quick, just essentially focused on the CBZ overlay and quick focused discussion surrounding that part. So yeah, should be quite straightforward.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? With that, City Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
Yes, we do, Chair. Joe Benson would like to speak.
Come on up, Joe.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Joe Benson. I live in the city of SLO. I just wanted to voice my support for the recommended amendments to the code and the expansion of the overlay zone. On the amendments to the code, the proposed updates would align SLO with what other cities are doing. And I think the data wasn't a staff report, but I think the data would support that there's not been a material increase in crime or other bad acts as a result of such updates. These changes will serve to allow the greater access for individuals and increase revenues for both the operators and the city. As to the overlay zone, as the staff report states, the East Airport area is an ideal spot. I own a home not too far away on El Capitan, and I think the concerns about traffic or otherwise are likely outweighed by the revenue opportunities to the city by allowing these types of business to operate. So I encourage you to support both recommendations. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, Chair, that was our only request.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I'll close public comment, discussion, or I'll entertain a motion in a second.
I'd move to approve staff's recommendation.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Deputy City Clerk, please call the roll in the motion.
Commissioner Cooley,
Aye.
Commissioner Munoz Morris,
Aye.
Commissioner Houghton, Commissioner Jorgensen, Chair Khan,
Yes.
and that motion passes.
With that, that closes the public hearing portion of the agenda. And now we go into staff updates and agenda forecast. And I believe, Ryan, you're going to give that to us?
Yes, I'm prepared to do that.
Thank you. Please do.
Your next meeting is on February 22nd, and you have flexible density on the schedule for that meeting. And that will, of course, be municipal code amendments, zoning amendments, and a recommendation to the city council. March 8th, you have a use permit scheduled, and that's for a small hotel at 830 Orcutt Road. And then on March 22nd, you're scheduled to hear the general plan annual report. That concludes the updates. I just wanted to also provide, I know it was mentioned at the last meeting, there is a good opportunity coming up soon on February 17th. The Institute for Local Governments conducting some commissioner training, and that is in San Luis Obispo. So all the topics are very applicable to the commission. It's CEQA and the types of matters that come before the Planning Commission, legal issues, and it seems like it's very on point with the Planning Commission's duties. So just wanted to provide that reminder.
I have a question on that.
Sure.
I was wondering where in San Luis Obispo it is.
I have the email that was sent, and I just was looking at this, and I don't see the location either.
No. And I asked earlier, I'm just kind of, curious where, because I'm maybe interested in attending, and but I'd like to kind of know where. So anyway. Yeah.
We can follow up on that
Okay,
for
thank you.
It's
I'd appreciate
probably at the community library. room,
That's
but we'll make sure.
a good guess. Yeah.
It's usually where they are.
It looks like they have it scheduled at the Ludwig Community Center.
Ludwig.
Oh, okay. Ludwig. Thank you very much.
That's on the 17th.
17th, right.
And the agenda looked good.
Mhm.
Yeah, the agenda looked good. Well, thank you very much for that report.
You're welcome. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. If there's nothing else, the next regular meeting of the Planning Commission is scheduled for February 22nd at 6 p.m. in the council chambers at City Hall, 990 Palm Street, San Luis Obispo. And with that, I call this meeting adjourned.